Hi, this is Critical Thinking for Ecosystem Science, Lecture 2 on Fallacies. I'm Dr. Tom Stolgren. This is loosely taken from Schick and Vaughn's textbook in 2010, loosely based on Chapter 3. Let's think about some fallacies in logic and then how they play out when we try to interpret a claim. Let's look at first at unacceptable premises, begging the question, a circular argument. The word of Zorba the Greek is flawless and perfect. We know this because it says so in the great and infallible book of Zorba's best and most truest things that are definitely true and should never ever be questioned. Yes, so if the information comes from the source itself, we may not be able to quickly accept the claim. How about false dilemmas, another unacceptable premise? Either you love bacon or you're wrong. There's no middle ground here, it's one or the other. Can you love bacon and be wrong about some things? Or can you be partially wrong or just like bacon? This puts you in a false dilemma, an unacceptable premise. We might say 2 is equal to a number and 1 is equal to a number. Therefore, 2 equals 1. That doesn't really follow. How about irrelevant premises such as composition, the part to the whole fallacy? They're paper clips, the boy says. You can't make something beautiful out of paper clips. And here this great artist has made a Statue of Liberty, albeit left-handed. I think the Statue of Liberty was right-handed. But in either case, the main thing is you can make something better as a whole than from its parts. We're made up of tiny little atoms, and yet we're human beings. Irrelevant premise, division. Now, sometimes breaking something apart doesn't maintain all of its attributes. The severed hand tiptoed menacingly across the bed cover. Well, if it's a severed hand, it should be lifeless, at least after a while. So that's the irrelevant premise of division. There's another irrelevant premise called the appeal to the person, or an ad hominem, an attack on the person rather than his ideas. Can we let a shrimp like this run our great country? Well, the attack is on the person then and not his ideas. We see television ads like this all the time in the political season. How about the genetic fallacy? I believe A is true because the source of the information is trustworthy. Doctors are trustworthy. We trust a lot of doctors. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Really? Anyway, this was a way to say, if I'm in a doctor's suit, you gotta believe me. I'm a doctor. There's another appeal to authority, which is an irrelevant premise based on the authority figure in mind. And this is Dr. Phil saying, take aspirin and get better. Well, if it's a famous guy, a Dr. Phil or a Mr. Phil or whatever, you tend to believe them. This is another irrelevant premise, appeal to the masses. The world is flat. Everybody agrees the world is flat. Therefore, the world is flat. Think about what the population believes as a whole. Well, that's not a good enough reason to accept something as fact. Another irrelevant premise is the appeal to tradition. You've got to respect our elders. They know what they're doing. They've always done it this way. Well, they may have always done it this way, but it doesn't make it right. There are irrelevant premises related to the appeal to ignorance. No one has ever seen a flying spaghetti monster, therefore it must be real. No one has really seen the Loch Ness monster or gotten a great picture of Bigfoot, therefore they must be real also. Ooh. A lack of evidence is not evidence. There's also an appeal to fear, another irrelevant premise. Anti-God is anti-American. Anti-American is treason. Traitors lead to civil war. Oh my gosh, an appeal to fear. You wouldn't want all those things to happen. And if you believe the first one, you may believe the second one, and you may get talked into the third one. That's appealing to fear. This is the straw man premise, an irrelevant premise that says, oh, if evolution were true, mothers would have 3 arms. This is an insufficient premise, a very hasty generalization. This is the one-size-fits-all store. And you have 3 creatures outside wondering, gee, will it really fit me? No, it's a hasty generalization. How about a faulty analogy, another insufficient premise? If you don't replace the toilet paper, then the terrorists win. Do you hate America? Well, that analogy just doesn't hold. It's not why you want to replace the toilet paper rolls. There must be other reasons. How about the insufficient premise called a false cause? Yeah, well, I only failed my logic exam because I'm a Pisces and the professor's a Leo. Gee, do you think that was why? An insufficient premise called a slippery slope. Well, if you let the bully in your yard, he'll soon be on your porch, and the next day or the day after that, he'll eat all your babies. What? Really? The turtle says, that escalated pretty quickly. And so each step got a little more exaggerated, and we don't want to believe those slippery slope premises. I like statistical fallacies. I find them most amusing. This is misleading averages. Here's the average male height at age 21. And look how much taller they look now compared to back in 1871. Why, they look twice as tall. But that's because they used a different scale-sized individual for each of their histograms. So look at how little the guy looks in 1871. And really, when you look at the true scale, the y-axis, it doesn't change all that much. In fact, it's only changed about 7% over that time. But you wouldn't think that was a 7% change based on the figures that were presented. I like this one too, the missing values statistical fallacy. Town A had a 75% increase in muggings last year. I better move to Town B. It only had a 50% increase in muggings. The towns had similar populations, but when you look at the real numbers instead of the percentages, those percentages hide a lot of important information. Town B had 400 muggings last year, and it's up to 600 this year. I'd rather live in a town that had only 4 last year and is up to 7 this year. So we can't base all of our decisions on simple percentages. There are some missing values we need to consider. I like this one too, the hasty comparison. Did you know that this product, what is it, Colgate, can reduce plaque up to 98%? Really? Up to 98%? That means his claim is true, whether it's 1%, 50%, or 98%. I'm not so sure I'll buy a much more expensive product if it only removes 1% more plaque. So this is a hasty comparison. You see this all the time. And the reason we're going through these fallacies is because scientists make them too. So you might see your science translated by a reporter who gets part of the story right. Only 10% of big ocean fish remain. Well, those are of a certain size, and you don't get all of that information in a condensed piece. But even the article might have been misleading in the way that they estimated the number of fish that are no longer there. Lions are close to extinction. This may or may not be true, but we need to look more in depth at the study, how it was done, the methods that were used, and the areas that were surveyed, how they were surveyed. A quarter of all mammals face extinction. Well, this may be true too, but we're not sure how those estimates are made. And the models that predict something far down the line might be wrong. And here's one where I got out today's Google News. Detergents pose little risk to the environment. Well, that may be true if they're handled correctly, and it says that in the article, but it doesn't mean you can just dump them willy-nilly down the drain and expect nothing to happen. And we haven't looked at the genetics, the genetic effects or other effects on tiny organisms or the food chains. So we want to be wary about claims made by scientists and reporters alike. And then the onus is on us to make proper claims and to have proper evidence supporting those claims. And we'll learn more about that as the course goes on. Thanks.